Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
The recording has started.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Okay, we are discussing chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita. And so yesterday we discussed chapter 1, observing the armies. And the whole point of that chapter was that Arjuna could not understand the plan of Krishna. No? That was a problem there. Krishna was observing from his own transcendental vision. Arjuna could not really understand that. Arjuna was confused. As a devotee, he had compassion. By the same time, momentarily, he's seeing his relatives and he's confused what to do, what not to do. So he's observing from his own platform of vision, from own angle of vision. So to make Arjuna understand his plan, Krishna starts Bhagavad Gita. That's the final which will come in 18th chapter. To help Arjuna to see this word through his own eyes. That is what is Bhagavad Gita all about. We have to train ourselves to see as Krishna sees. Or in other words, Prabhupada says, to become one with Krishna. Now, one with Krishna means not just to become one actually. Soul and super soul doesn't become one. But the vision of Lord and the devotee of Lord becomes one. So, let's come to chapter 2. Krishna starts with Bhagavad Gita. His mission is to convince Arjuna that you should cooperate with me in my plans. You should desire what I desire. You should see as I see and not see as you see. Not desire as you desire and not plan as you plan. Is it? So, that's chapter 2. So chapter 2, Krishna is, now the name of chapter 2 is Contents of Gita Summarized. Okay, so chapter 2, name of chapter 2 is Contents of Gita Summarized. Now, if you want to understand that chapter, you understand the purport of the first verse and you got the chapter. That's all. And I'll show you how simple. It's a big chapter. Actually, chapter 2 is a very big chapter. Like it's one of the biggest chapter. How many verses are there? There are 72. And that's 18 chapter. It's like 76, 78, something like that. So one of the biggest chapter, longest chapter. So Prabhupada writes in purport that Prabhupada writes here. We can read the first shloka. Krishna says, Sanjay said, seeing Arjuna full of compassion, his mind depressed, his eyes full of tears, Madhusudan, Krishna spoke the following words. So material compassion, lamentation, tears are all sign of ignorance of real self. See, Prabhupada writes here. Compassion for eternal soul is self-realization. And so you can skip few lines. No one knows where compassion should be applied. Compassion for dress of drowning man is senseless. So, see what's happening. Arjuna, the more he is seeing his relatives, and so many people in the battle, the more he's getting confused. Because he's thinking, so many people will die unnecessarily. It's a fight between me and Duryodhana, His agenda is with me. And Krishna is telling, kill everybody. He can't understand this, Krishna can plan, that nobody comes in the battlefield, Duryodhana and we both will be there. And it can be decided. But Krishna is saying, you kill everybody. So that's what is making him confused, is it? And he's saying, all society will be corrupted, this, that, all moral principles. He's slowly getting confused because he can't see the big picture. He's in the small picture. And that's what happens with all of us, Many times we face a situation, we get confused. We see the small picture. We can't figure out the big picture. We can't figure out Krishna's plan. And that's what is happening with Arjuna. The more he thinks, the more he's coming on material platform. Material platform means that a platform where you're thinking by your own understanding. Spiritual platform means a platform where you're thinking from Krishna's understanding. That's all. Finish. So he as a pure devotee, he has true compassion also. I told you it is complex, no? Deep down, he is having true compassion. But at the same time, he is confused what to fight or not to fight. These are relatives, and it's becoming so complex. So to get him out of this complexity, give him a clear vision what Krishna wants, he starts this chapter. This second chapter, and in second chapter you just have to remember that there are two. Why he speaks this chapter? Because of two reasons. What is there in this chapter? Two things. That's all. Second chapter. So you have two reasons of speaking this chapter. And what are the contents of the chapter? You have 2 points. So what are the two reasons why Krishna speaks this chapter? Prabhupada says here. You can come in the last line. Lord Krishna, a man fallen in ocean of nescience cannot be saved simply by rescuing the outward dress. You got it? In the purport?
Yes.
Everybody got it? A man fallen in ocean of nescience cannot be saved simply by rescuing his outward dress, gross material body. One who does not know this and laments for outward dress is called Shudra, one who laments unnecessarily. See? Arjuna was Kshatriya and this conduct was not expected from him. Lord Krishna, however, can dissipate the lamentation of ignorant man. This is the first reason why Krishna speaks this chapter. First, to get him out of the lamentation. See? That's the problem, no? I told yesterday, if somebody is lamenting, you can't explain him your plans. No? Somebody is dead and he is weeping and he come. See, can you just come on side? My plan is this. Come on here. I'm messed up. My mind is confused and you want to tell me your plans? So this is the first reason. We want to get him out of lamentation. That's why he speaks this chapter. First. And for this purpose, Bhagavad Gita was sung by him. See? That's the first reason. And the second reason he speaks this chapter is, this chapter instructs us in self-realization by an analytical study of material body and spirit soul. So second reason to speak this chapter is to give the knowledge of self-realization. Is it? Atma Sakshatkar ka Vigyan. That's there. So that's there. So two reasons in second chapter. So it is said in scriptures, never advise a person who is lamenting. Never advise. 4 people you should never advise. One who is weeping, depressed. Second, husband and wife. Don't advise them. Don't come in between them. You'll get it. It's their thing, 2 brahmanas. If 2 brahmans are discussing, 2 knowledgeable persons are discussing, don't advise them. You'll fall into trouble. And also, you should never advise until you're hired. No? It's said, nobody asks you, why do you want to go and advise? They'll not listen to you. It's not your job. So 4 people you should never advise. Arjuna falls in one of this category, no? Lamentation. Lamentation is like, he is not asked your advice. He is weeping. Why do you want to go and just advise him? He'll not listen to you. So, 2 things, Krishna. So by his knowledge of second chapter, knowledge of soul, his own knowledge, he first gets him out of lamentation and gives him knowledge of self-realization, a glimpse of self-realization. Okay, this is self-realization. Now you have to understand what is self-realization. Self-realization is difference between spirit, soul and body, and also to understand that self of self is Krishna. Self-realization is not just limited to soul. It goes beyond soul to the real self, that is Krishna. We are self, and self of self is Krishna. Atma, Paramatma. So Atma is soul, Paramatma is?
Super.
Yeah, why do we add Param? Param we add Paramatma means, Param means who is beyond soul, who is more powerful than soul. Param can also means who is Param Priya, who is very dear to soul, and who is soul of all souls, super soul. So self-realization, he gives a glimpse of self-realization here. But how to achieve that platform of self-realization? That's the point. You have knowledge, but how to realize that self-realization? That's the question, no? Because it's all with us now. We know, but we don't know. So how to do that? So Krishna tells two techniques in this chapter, in the second chapter. 2 points which you have to follow to attain to that platform of self-realization. This realization, Prabhupada says, this realization is possible when one works without attachment to fruitive results. Last line of the purport. Last line. This realization is possible when one works without attachment to fruitive results. Simple. So now, suppose you all know that you are not this body or soul. We have to serve Krishna. But at the same time, we are not realized, no? There's a difference between realization and knowledge, no? What's the difference? Experience? Yeah, you can, but anyway. Practical. Explanation. What is it, what do you mean by experience?
I mean, theoretical is good, but when we practice, there is a deeper level of establishment.
You see, realization means at the platform of knowledge, you can get confused. But at the platform of realization, you can never get confused. That's the difference. So just like we never get confused that we are the shirt. No. Although we are wearing entire day. When you come in night, you don't fear, my God, I have to remove my shirt. Maybe I am a shirt. No. Whole life we are wearing shirt, but we never get confused. Similarly, this body is shirt. So self-realized person never gets confused that this is me. We get confused. We start working on this platform. So, Prabhupada says, this realization is possible when one works without attachment to fruitive results. So, one topic of the second chapter is Krishna is explaining how to work without attachment to fruitive results, which in other words is called Karma Yoga. Is it? Which will come afterwards. So he's talking about Karma Yoga. Karma Yoga means how to work without attachment to fruitive results. Karma Yoga, how to work without attachment to fruitive results? Is it possible to work without attachment to results? Is it possible? Everybody wants results now. Without results, you can't do anything. So, Karma Yoga means doing something for Krishna. You take results and offer to Krishna. And that's how you're not attached to fruitive results, that Karma Yoga. So, it's talking about Karma Yoga. Which in turn is almost like Bhakti Yoga, no? You're working for Krishna, for satisfaction of Krishna. Okay, Krishna, you want this? I'll start working for you. That is Karma Yoga. If you work for Krishna, then you'll not be attached to fruitive results, is it? You'll be attached to Krishna. Simple. Yeah, I'm working for him. So you're attached to Krishna, you're not attached to results. That is Karma Yoga. And is situated in fixed conception of real self. And the second thing a person should do is Jnana Yoga. Jnana Yoga means fixed in the conception of real self. What do you mean by that? Fixed in the conception of real self. What is Jnana? Knowledge. What is real knowledge? That I am soul and the function of soul is to serve him. That Krishna says, fixed in the conception of real self. Now this word fixed is very important here. Why? I'll tell you just now why. But you understand? So Krishna is talking Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga. The beauty of Prabhupada Gita is, Prabhupada translates Karma Yoga as Bhakti Yoga. You see, entire time. And Prabhupada translates Jnana Yoga also as Bhakti Yoga. And Bhakti Yoga as Bhakti Yoga. So Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga are like two children of Bhakti Yoga. Karma Yoga means doing action for Krishna, karma. Jnana Yoga means trying to understand Krishna and yourself, self and relationship. Is it? And when you do this both, then when it matures, it becomes real Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti Yoga means you become attached to Lord. And with attachment now you are serving. With attachment you want to know. See? So this is the strategy of Prabhupada. Prabhupada translates Bhagavad Gita like that. So that's why we'll discuss all this much later. But now you understand, Krishna speaks Bhagavad Gita 2nd chapter for 2 reasons. First reason is to get Arjuna out of lamentation, so that he can tell his plan. And the second reason is the knowledge of self-realization. Okay, knowledge of self-realization means actually knowledge of devotion. No? Devotion. Yes. Self-realization is ultimately comes to that point, which begins with knowledge of soul and body. And how he does that? He does that beginning in 2nd chapter. In 2nd chapter, he explains 2 things. How to achieve that platform of self-realization? Start acting without attachment to fruited results, karma yoga. Or in other words, start acting for me, then you will not be attached to results. And second is jnana yoga. Try to be fixed in conception of real self. Now these 2 words are important, fixed and real self. Now you know what happens. Okay, Krishna says all these things in 2nd chapter, fine. He slowly gives fixed in conception of real self. He begins the knowledge of soul. No, what is soul? He talks about soul, consciousness. Soul can never be destroyed, burnt. It cannot be wet. All these things. Material body is destroyed. Material body is temporary. Soul is permanent. All these things. And also he tells Arjuna in 2nd chapter, get up and fight. Is it? You see, Yogastha Kuru Karmani. If you read 2nd chapter, you'll know. So fight. Fighting, you'll get victory or defeat. Don't worry about that. Be attached to me. I am saying, do it. It's attachment without full results. Okay. But the problem is, Krishna says you should be fixed in conception of real self. Problem is to fix in this idea is difficult, no? Getting fixed is difficult. So Arjuna at the end of the chapter, he asks one question. What are the symptoms of a person who is fixed in conception of real self? And you come to this where is this question? This is question number, you can open this page number, text 54. Just come to 54. Text is there, page number 121. And Arjuna asks, Arjuna said, "Oh Krishna, what are the symptoms of one whose consciousness is merged in transcendence? What are the symptoms of a person whose consciousness is fixed in conception of real self?" In other words, is it? How he speaks, how he uses language, how he sits, how he walks. Simple. Because Arjuna was worried that to fix our mind is very difficult. Krishna, you are giving me 2 techniques to realize yourself. Okay, I can understand karma yoga. I can understand to work without fruited results. That I can understand. That I can do. I can start working for you. You say, I'll start working for you. But what about the second, jnana yoga? To be fixed in conception of yourself, my mind is really out. No? He's lamenting, no? He's confused. My mind is out. And you're telling you should be fixed in the knowledge that I am servant of God. I am soul. These are all bodies. Bodies will get destroyed. Soul will not destroyed. I can't understand. I'm confused. What to do? So please tell me what are the symptoms of a person who is fixed in conception of real self. That's where this question comes up. Because of that strategy which Krishna is giving Arjuna to realize his self. And then you can read this whole section. Krishna is giving the symptoms of a person who is on the fixed in the conception of real self. You can read afterwards all these things. There's a gradual progression here. How Krishna speaks. I can explain a little bit. Krishna says, Arjuna asks here 1, 2. Arjuna asks, how does he speak? What is his language? How he sits and how he walks. 4 questions. Yeah, simple. And Krishna gives his answer. Krishna says in 55 verse, This section is also important for us, because if we ever reach to realization of self, we should know all these symptoms should be coming in us. Otherwise, we get cheated, We can cheat ourselves. We are very expert at cheating ourselves. There is in Bible, it comes, one prophet, he asks God that why do you destroy this world, You are creator, maintainer, destroyer. Okay, I can understand you are creator because you are merciful. But what about destruction? Are you not so merciful? You are merciless. So God says that I don't destroy this world. I create. But I don't need to destroy, because you are sufficient to destroy yourself. So he doesn't do that. So that's a problem, So this Arjuna's question is relevant to us also, whether we are fixed or not fixed. And that's why Prabhupada calls this as science, science of self-realization. He doesn't call it as religion. So anybody if they ask you, okay, Gita is a religious book, you can just quote this section and tell them, see, it's not religious, it is all science. How he speaks, how he sits, how he walks, they're all symptoms of a self-realized person. Religion is blind faith. You do this. Why should I do? Shut up. You go to hell. That's religion, no? But Arjuna is asking question, what are the symptoms of a realized person? And Krishna says here. So, Krishna actually at 18th chapter, he defines religion. Swabhav adhyatma uchyate. To change your nature is called religion. And if you change your nature, you get some symptoms. This is science, cause and effect. No? Hetu madbir vinishchita. Krishna gives definition of science later. I'll come to that point. Cause and effect. There is a cause that I am fixed in my soul, self-realization. What is the effect? This is the effect. Simple. So you can argue. See, right in the 2nd chapter. There is no term as Hindu. There is no term as religion. There is no blind faith. Okay, so Krishna gives answers to that. What are the general symptoms of a person who is fixed, who is realized? Okay, general symptoms of a person who is realized is, this is 55th verse, Supreme Personality of Godhead said, when a man gives up all varieties of desire for sense gratification, which arise from mental concoction, when his mind thus purified finds satisfaction in self alone, then he is said to be in pure transcendental consciousness. So the first question was, what are the symptoms of one whose consciousness is merged in transcendence? What are the general symptoms? General symptoms and specific symptom. No? We go to doctor, I am getting fever. Okay, general symptom is you are having temperature. The specific symptom is you are having black stools. If you have jaundice. So general symptoms. See, it is so systematic, Gita. Gita is not hodgepodge. Everything is divided. So, you can remember, 2nd chapter, 2 symptoms. See, 2nd chapter, 2 purpose, 2 topics, and 2 symptoms. That's how you remember. That's all. And everything is there in first purport. If you read first purport nicely, you can get the link. So 2 symptoms Krishna is saying. General symptom is that he gives up all desires for sense gratification which arise from mental concoction. Now this is important if you think about it. Sense gratification comes from mental concoction. Mental concoction means, what is mental concoction? Which Arjuna is doing. He's confused. Should fight or not fight? Fight, not fight. Fight, not fight. He's confused. And from that confusion, sense gratification begins. So, when you're confused, then you want to enjoy this word. You get all stupid ideas. Enjoy or renounce, whatever. Duryodhana wants to enjoy. Arjuna wants to renounce. See? Both things. Both things are wrong. If it is coming from mind. That's what is mental concoction, sense gratification. Renouncing is also bad. So Arjuna wants, I don't want to fight. Krishna says, foolish. You're a fool. Duryodhana says, I want to fight. Krishna says, you are a fool. So what to do? Fight or not fight? See, both are fools. And that's what is Arjuna's confusion. What should I do? You say to him, fighting is bad. And then I say I don't fight, and you say to me, if I don't fight, then you fight. See? So at the platform of mind, both decisions are wrong. Fighting and not fighting. So, and that confusion is whatever activity you do with this kind of mind setup, that is sense gratification. Simple. So we should not think sense gratification is just enjoying. Renunciation is also sense gratification. That's the point, because it's coming from your own mind. It is not plan of God. See? And if Krishna wants you to enjoy, what you will do?
Enjoy.
Yeah, you should enjoy. If Krishna says you enjoy, you go to Disney World and whatever you want to do, just do it. You should enjoy. So that is why Prabhupada writes mental concoction. He adds the word mental concoction. Because generally we think sense gratification means enjoyment. No. It also includes renunciation. That is first chapter. Now you have to understand, see. So, but following orders of God, that is spirituality. You understand? So that is general symptom. General symptom of a pure devotee is he does what Krishna says. Simple. He is not concerned with enjoyment. He is not concerned with renunciation. Krishna, if you want me to eat 100 pastries, I'll eat. No problem. That's all. Finish. So there's a difference. They asked Prabhupada. Prabhupada went to America and they got for Prabhupada some Rolls Royce to pick him up. So one reporter people were saying, what? So it's for Saint Rolls Royce. What is this? They should come in like simple car. Then Prabhupada told his disciples, what is this? This Rolls Royce is a box of tin. For me, a chariot of gold should be coming. Because I am a devotee of God. So you see, it seems sense gratification. It seems enjoyment, no? That's why many people, devotees, it's difficult to understand. Because externally they might look like they're enjoying. But they are not enjoying actually. This Vivekanand, he travelled all over India. And he went to temples, South Indian, and then he saw devotees taking pongal. You know pongal? And like good, like ghee, prasad, and they're like fat. And they are dancing. So Vivekananda said, what is this? They are enjoyers. He's a yogi, no? They're enjoyers. And he wrote in his book, Complete Works of Vivekananda, that these people are wrong, They're enjoying against all Vaishnavas. But he could understand that both renunciation and enjoyment are wrong without God. That's why Prabhupada says, if you want to enjoy, enjoy with Krishna. Enjoyment is not bad. You can't stop enjoyment, first of all. You can't. Just like you all are enjoying now. You're enjoying? Listening. So okay, that's good. Enjoy with God. No problem. That's fine. So, it's important. And second general symptom is, he finds satisfaction in self alone.
What is that?
Now, what do you mean by that? If you really think about it, Prabhupada said in his room conversations, that a devotee can sit in one room, he can close his eyes, he's self-satisfied. Point, okay, can you explain what do you mean by that? Satisfaction in self alone. Anybody? There are two meanings. You read afterwards in the purport. Now don't read. Okay, this is a verse. What do you mean by that? This is a Sanskrit verse, no? But I need the meaning. Or it's a practical meaning of it.
Yeah, he is satisfied in himself only, he or her.
Yeah, you're repeating the statement, but I need the meaning.
Yeah, so whatever outside condition, happiness, distress, he is not bothered by that. He is always fixed.
Well, I need a proper explanation. This is going round and round now. Okay, fine. Thank you for that. See, the point, satisfaction in self alone means two meanings. Self not only means soul, self means super soul. I just told. Soul of soul. Satisfaction in self means he finds satisfaction in service of God. Alone. That's one meaning. See? So he finds happiness in serving God. That's one meaning. And the other meaning is that his happiness is not dependent on any other thing. Now our happiness is dependent, is it? If we want to become happy, we need cell phone, laptop, TV, movie, friends. Without them, we'll not happy, no? So happiness is dependent on not non-self, some others, not on oneself. If we don't have, we'll go mad. But self-realized person, his happiness is independent of all these things. It's not dependent on people, on circumstances, on gadgets. He can close his eyes, he's self-satisfied. He is liberated. That's called liberation. Liberation is not something, close your eyes and you're in clouds. That's not science. That's religion. Om, and then you will realize something. No, this is science. So liberation means your happiness is liberated from the... You're no more a slave. Now we are slave, no? We are slaves of gadgets. We are slaves of our own friends. If you think it's like that, if you can really think, we think he's our friend, okay, but Krishna says you're a slave of him. Because you can't live without him. Simple. So everybody is a slave. We are slave of our relatives, of our people who are with us. We can't live without them. Our happiness is with them, dependent on them. But liberated people, they are independent. That's all. Such a deep meaning, no? He finds satisfaction in self alone. Then he is fixed to be in transcendental consciousness. He and Krishna. He doesn't need anybody. And Krishna is within him. Simple. So he is liberated. This is general symptom of a realized person. So question is, are you realized? Anybody? No. We are not. But at the same time we know, okay, this is where we have to reach. This is where, if the point of all this is, Krishna doesn't say that the symptom of self-realized people is that he'll feel bliss. Does he say? No. So don't get confused. If you feel bliss, if you feel happiness, that's okay. You're advancing, but you're not gone to perfection. That's not the symptom. Because generally we think, okay, if I am getting bliss and peace, yeah, okay, fine. It's done. It's not done. Just starting. And just starting. That bliss is given by Krishna as an advertisement to you. To help you go along the journey. If you don't get bliss, then you don't walk the path, no? So that bliss is not for you to enjoy. That bliss is to encourage you, keep on walking, okay? Keep on walking. It's a happy journey, keep on walking. And you reach this end. Otherwise, if you don't reach this end, then there's always somebody behind us. Who is that? Maya. She is really a Devi, she'll not leave us. She is behind us. So general, okay, fine. And the next question now. Next question, what Arjuna asks? How does he speak? How does he speak? Yeah. So Krishna answers, how does he speak? 56th verse. Okay, one who is not disturbed, I am reading 2nd chapter 56th verse. The answer to this question, how does he speak? One who is not disturbed in mind, even amidst threefold miseries, elated when there is happiness, who is free from attachment, fear, anger, is called sage of steady mind. So what is his answer? The question was how he speaks. And Krishna gives his answer. Can you make a sense of this link? Or this question and answer?
It seems it's very similar to the previous one.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If you read Gita, everything will seem similar. That's what my point is. Krishna is saying same thing, don't be attached, be equal, and it's repeating. No, it's not repeating. He's God. He doesn't repeat.
That verse speak only about Krishna.
Okay, but I am asking you, how does you link that question to this answer? What Krishna is saying in this verse. Why is giving this kind of answer? Like, which is confusing. He is not disturbed in mind in threefold miseries, elated when there is happiness, free from attachment, fear, anger. This is completely something else, no? He doesn't. Arjuna asks, how does you speak? Krishna could have simply said, you should speak about me. But he says no, whose mind is not disturbed. And it's like funny. So what do you do with this answer? So, if you read this purport nicely, you will get the answer. But you read this purport nicely. See, come to this purport. Now, there's a line here. You see, he is called a Muni fixed in mind. You found this statement in the middle of the purport, everybody? Second 56, he is called a Muni fixed in mind. Right. Such a fully Krishna conscious person is not at all disturbed by onslaughts of threefold miseries, for he accepts all miseries as mercy of Lord, thinking himself only worthy of more trouble due to his past misdeeds. And he sees that miseries by the grace of Lord are minimized to the lowest. That's how he speaks. When he gets miseries, he says, this is mercy of Lord. See? That's what he speaks. If you ask him, if he's feeling miseries, if his mind is so much suffering, if you ask him, so what's the problem? He says, no problem. It's mercy of Lord. So you have to read Prabhupada purports very nicely. Prabhupada gives the answer, but you have to apply your mind to find the answer. That's what is the purport. And then next, continue. Similarly, when he is happy, he gives credit to the Lord, thinking himself unworthy of happiness. So when he's happy, if you ask him, why are you happy? Yeah, it's Krishna's grace. This credit goes to Krishna. It's not due to my own endeavor. I have become happy. It's not my credit. Credit goes to Krishna. He praises God. That's how he speaks. So, Krishna gives an answer. Like this.
You find that in the verse, Prabhuji?
You can find in the verse. Prabhupada is showing you how to find in the verse. Because verse Krishna says, who is not disturbed in mind, even threefold miseries. Why is not disturbed? Because he thinks about grace of Lord. When you ask him, he'll speak about grace of Lord. He speaks about mind. Because mind is center of senses, no? Mind thinks, mind feels, and then he speaks. So that's why Krishna starts with mind, not really with speech. He's giving the reason why he speaks like that. Also in this verse. He's doing two things at one time, no? Because if you say, he always speaks about Krishna. Okay, why? Why you always speak about Krishna? Don't you feel unhappy? Don't you feel sad? Don't you speak about any other thing? So he gives reason, and by one verse he does two things. So intelligent person can make out, and Prabhupada then gives purport. Because we are not intelligent. That's the problem with all of us, no? Manda sumanda matyo manda bhakyo padrita. We are dull. Okay, fine. And so the next question is, what is this? What is his language? That's okay. That's always there. His language and speaking is same. Okay. So the next question is how he sits. Okay, how he sits. Now one thing before that. See, just now we answered how a devotee speaks, self-realized person. If you answer, he speaks always about Krishna. Then that's not a good answer. That's a good answer, but you have to go specific, because always speaking about Krishna, then you can say, I always speak about Krishna. But the real test comes, how do you speak when you're distressed? How do you speak when you're extremely happy? That is a test. That's what Krishna wants to see. Otherwise, everybody can speak about Krishna, no? You can speak, I can speak. Lectures can go on. But when you're disturbed, when miseries come, then we'll see what happens, no? And he's shouting, Mami, or Krishna. Then that comes. One of a devotee, he got admitted to hospital. Like, he was quite old person. He was initiated for a long time. Like, he was about to die. Then so many devotees went to him. He was Nana, grandfather. So he was initiated, he was chanting. Then he went, and then devotees were telling, please say Krishna. And he was saying, no, Mummy, Ma. He was remembering his mother. He was like 70 years old. His breath was stopping, And when your breathing stops, then is a real test. Now everything is fine. So that's why Krishna brings this point of miseries and happiness. When you're super happy, then also it's difficult to speak about Krishna. So that's what Krishna says. So that answer to always speak about Krishna, it has to be qualified and specified. In what conditions you want to test that? See, that's the answer here. That's why he's bringing this point. You asking why he's saying like that? That's why he's bringing this point here. That's a self-realized person. So Krishna can test us easily. Krishna, I'll always speak about you. Okay, now be ready for sufferings. I want to test you. He will give he'll do something. He is naughty, He'll do something. And why he will do? He doesn't want to test. He knows, he's inside you. Whether you are cheating or whether you are like immature answer, he wants to show you where you are. He doesn't want you to test. But by putting you to test, he will show you where you are. मतलब कितने पानी में हो ये दिखा देंगे भगवान. Because at the end, you might say, Krishna, I did everything perfectly and you didn't give me mercy. What is this? Well, okay, I'll show you. So, how does he speak? Okay. So, whenever you want to test whether you're advanced or not, you should see yourself when you are in miseries, troubles, or you're happy. That time you have to see yourself. Otherwise, you can get confused. And that is why it is said in scriptures, those devotees who get miseries in the life, they are very fortunate. Because that's an opportunity to know ourselves where I am. Otherwise, you will never know where you are. Never. Okay? So now, how does he sit? Next verse he answers, 57. So how do you sit, like this or like? No.
That's how we understand. Bro.
That's how we understand.
We want the answer. Sit means what position?
Okay.
Posture.
Okay, here Krishna answers in 2nd chapter, 57th verse. How does he sit? In material world, I am reading 2nd 57. In material world, one who is unaffected by whatever good or evil he may obtain, neither praising nor despising it, is firmly fixed in perfect knowledge. Now can you figure out? Why does Krishna speak? How does he sit? What is his answer? He is not unaffected by good or evil. Doesn't praise nor despise. Is firmly fixed in perfect knowledge. The question of fixed in conception, see, is there? There, that first purport, who is fixed in real conception. It comes firmly fixed. So how do you link this? What Krishna is saying. See, this, what, it also shows one thing, this section. That if you want to understand God directly, you will not be able to understand. You need help of devotees. Without purports, it's impossible to understand what he is saying. Sometimes we think we understand, but we are not understanding. There's something else going on. Because it's spoken by God. So Krishna says, okay, how does he sit? He is unaffected by good or evil. Sit also means fixed, no? You're sitting at one place. Sit. Suppose a child is making naughty, he's running all around. What do you say? Sit. Sit in one place. That means calm down, no? Calm down. Don't be disturbed. Sit in your mind. Bodily you can do one thing, but sit at one place in your mind. That's why Krishna says, who is unaffected by good or evil. How does he sit? He is sitting in his mind. His body might be moving, he's doing so many things, but he's sitting at the lotus feet of Krishna in his mind. Any good thing comes, he's not elated. Any bad thing comes, he's not affected. He's fixed. Sitting at the lotus feet of God in his heart. He's sitting there. See, such a nice answer, no? So beautiful. Gita is excellent.
So Prabhuji, Arjuna in text 254, he was not asking the physical, but mostly on the, how is the mental state? Right?
Of course. He might be asking something, simple questions. How does he sit? How does he sit? How does he walk? We can also ask, no, self-realized person, how he sits, how it walks. But probably Krishna is giving a different answer. He's twisting the story, It doesn't matter whether he sits in what posture. What matters is how he sits in mind. That matters. Okay, so, and you know what, why Krishna is answering like this? Also to make us understand that you should not judge a Vaishnava by his external things. How he sits, how he walks, it doesn't matter. Krishna could have answered this, no? He sits in Padma posture or whatever, yoga. Doesn't say, because then a person who is not sitting, what about him? He's not a devotee. You should not judge a devotee by his actions. Always. You have to judge a devotee by his intentions, his mind, to look within him. That's what he is saying this. Not within him, but outside also. His speech, his conduct, he's not affected. You can see all this, na? This is all objective symptoms, not really subjective. So you can see people how they are doing. Just like Pandavas, they were disturbed. Duryodhana wanted to kill them, but they were not disturbed. They were always fixed with Krishna. Draupadi, come on, any lady, if anybody she undergoes like Draupadi, she'll do suicide. Definitely she's going to suicide if you're getting disrobed in front of everybody. But she didn't lose faith in Krishna. Still Krishna was her friend. That is, she's sitting at the lotus feet of Krishna. So you can see that. Prabhupada, you can see. Prabhupada had so many difficulties in preaching. He went to America, got heart attacks. He was fixed. 1 year, no progress. No preaching in America. He was just struggling. Then he got problems in health. He went back to India to get his health come up. Then he came back, then things came up. But he was fixed. He was determined. That's the point.
How does such amount of faith in such a deep...
Okay, fine. That afterwards you ask. Fine. Okay. So how... that's question done. And the next question is, how does he walk? So of course we don't expect catwalk and all this walk. How does he walk? 58th verse, Krishna answers, second 58. He says, one who is able to withdraw his senses from sense objects, as a tortoise draws its limbs within the shell, is firmly fixed in perfect consciousness. Again and again this word fixed is coming, see? To that point, he is fixed in conception of real self. So that's why this. So how does he walk? Krishna says, one who is able to withdraw his senses from sense objects. Why he answers like that? He answers like that because you can read the purport afterwards, but he answers because we walk in this world, no? We walk, we are in job, we are in household life. That's how we make our way through this world, is it? Everybody makes their way through this world. That's how he walks. It's not just walking. It is in the interacting with this material world. That's what walking is all about. Is it? So there's a maze. Maze, you know maze? Bulbulaiya. And then you put some person and then you tell him, walk through this maze. Show me, try to walk through this maze and come that way. So what does that walk means? You have to figure out the maze. So that is a sense of walking here. Figure out the way in this material world. And how does a devotee figure out the way in material world? This is the point. One is able to withdraw his senses from sense objects. When he is interacting with this material world, when he is walking through this maze of material world, is difficult, no? Puzzling. So many things come. We don't expect things come. So when he is walking through this maze of material world, his senses might get attracted to this sense objects. So how does he walk? He keeps his senses controlled. Whenever he wants to use his senses, like a tortoise, he uses. Doesn't want to use, he can bring back. So the point is, Krishna says he is in self-control. He walks with a self-control. Just like people say, how does that businessman walk? Yeah, he walks in his prestige. He walks as a tiger, no? He walks as a lion. Like a president, yeah. He walks like an elephant. So how does a devotee walk? He walks with full self-control. If he wants to use his senses, he uses. If he doesn't want to use, doesn't use. So that's what is walking all about. Pragya pratisthita. He is pratisthit. He is established in himself. That's what Krishna says. So this 4 questions Krishna answers this. And that is the answer to that proposal what he gives. He gives 2 proposals, no? Work without attachment to fruits, that he can understand. You work for Krishna, you are not attached to fruits. Fixed in conception of yourself, that's difficult. So what are the symptoms? Please tell me. Krishna tells. Finish. And then there are some verses. If you read little more in these verses, Krishna is talking about about how a devotee falls into this material world. You come to the second chapter 62 verse. Now the question is, a person who is not fixed in self, who doesn't have these symptoms, who is not really fixed, what happens to him? He will fall down, no? Just like we all. We are not fixed. So we might fall down. So what is a mechanism of falling down? How does he fall down? If you are not fixed, how do you fall down? That is science, no? It's all science. So Krishna gives in 2 verses, how does a person not fixed in self fall down? And he answers in 262. He says, Dhyayato vishyam pumsa sangaste shubjayate sanga sanjayate kamat krodha vijayate. While contemplating the objects of senses, a person develops attachment for them. Now the point here is, because he's not fixed in Krishna, he starts thinking of the objects. And this is where story begins. Dhyayato. When you think of anything without link to Krishna, you will fall down. That's the end. This starts here, but this is not starting. This is the end. It goes very fast. You fall down. And that is how you should protect yourself from falling down. How to protect ourselves from falling down? Dhyayato. Thinking. It starts from thinking. If it comes in your feeling and actions, you'll not be able to stop it. You can't stop. You have to stop there. Thinking stage. Otherwise it's impossible to stop. Once it comes in feeling, it will pull you. You will not be able to resist those things. So thinking means here sankalp. You understand sankalp? Sankalp, what do we say in English? What do we say?
Some kind of oath. Sankalp lena. Oath.
Yeah, you can say oath. Probably here we define as determination. Determined vow, you can say. Determined vow. So that's important. If we are not fixed in our vow, we'll fall down. That's why Prabhupada is mentioning in the purport of example of Haridas Thakur. So Mayadevi came to test him. Why didn't he fall down? Why? Because he was fixed in his vow. That's what your question answer. How do you develop faith? You develop faith by keeping your vows. Otherwise you fall down. That's why Prabhupada so many times told that follow rules and regulations of devotion very nicely. Rules and regulations will not allow us to think. That is designed like that. We are programmed to think something else than Krishna. No matter how much we try, we'll slip. So okay, Krishna says, okay, these are rules and regulations. They will not allow you to think. Like in company. You have rules and regulations. You can't do something. You can't do. It's locked. Password is locked. You can't do. And that's what prevents chaos. If you tell people, okay, fine, you should not do this, you should not do this, there are no passwords in this thing, it'll end up in chaos. Nobody's controlled now. So you have to put locks. And that locks are rules and regulations. That is why it's very important to follow rules and regulations. Prabhupada says, never break any rule and regulation. Never do that. Once you do, you're free to think. And once you think, you're fallen.
The 4 regulative principles, you mean?
4 regulative principles, and then other regulative principles like chanting 16 rounds or whatever rounds you're chanting. If you're new, whatever you have taken vow, 4 rounds, 5 rounds, don't break that. Mangal Arati, at evening and morning. All those matters. Small things matter. They matter. So now you know why rules and regulations are there. There's a science behind that. It's not we are forced. So it's not religion. So that's what Western philosophers criticize, no? Kierkegaard, Schopenhauer, Nietzsche. Religion means suppression, oppression, tyranny. They're bad. Christianity, they were criticized. But because Christianity doesn't have explanation. So that's what the problem was. Gita is explanation. So I told you this entire second chapter you can quote. Somebody says religion, tell him, come on, sit, I'll tell you. And then you go one by one, how he walks, how he talks, how he this, these are the symptoms of this. Now what you can say? You can't say anything. So when I'm speaking about Gita, I'm also telling you how to preach. And that you keep in mind these things. And you learn how to do that. And so how do you fall down? These are 2 verses. Yeah, so these questions are also handled. I am giving you questions also. You can write this question. So how do you fall down? 262, 263. Then you can quote them. Okay, what is the symptoms of self-realized person? Then that is second chapter.
55, 56.
55, 56, 57 and 58. 4 sloks, 4 verses. What is self-love? What is symptoms? This is a symptom. Simple, no? So you have to learn all these things. Okay, so how does it fall down? Once you start thinking, you break rules, regulations, and you start thinking of something. So it is not you start thinking unnecessarily. The point is you break rules and regulations, and then you start thinking. So you start thinking, then you develop attachment. From attachment comes lust. From lust comes anger. How much time it takes to do this? Yeah, not even a second. Maybe micro. You will not know what's happening. And then 63 is from anger comes delusion. From delusion comes bewilderment of memory. Memory is bewildered. Intelligence is lost. Intelligence lost. One falls down again into material pool. So an example of this is given. If you have 100 leaves. 100 leaves?
Leaves?
Yeah, leaves. You take leaves. Tree leaves. You put 100 leaves. And then you put a needle. How much time it takes to come other end? It will just come now. So, but when you are putting the needle, it is piercing first leaf, second leaf. There is a sequence. But it feels it is just put and come out now. It feels like that. Similarly, Krishna is giving all these steps, but you will not be able to understand these steps. You think and you have fallen. Your intelligence is lost. But he is telling this is what is happening. This is what is happening. If you do slow motion, then you will understand what's happening. But it goes very fast. So you don't come to know what's happening. These are 2 verses for how do you fall down. Okay, and the next verse, second 64.
I guess, is it because also of gravity? You fall down, boom.
Gravity of illusion. Yeah,
it takes effort to go up, but fall down is...
Maybe you're right. Yeah, that's a metaphor. Yeah. Okay, 264. 264 is the most important verse. It's a most important verse. If you can, this is one of the best verse. Now, can anybody tell me what's the most important here? I'll read the translation. Second chapter 64. But a person free from all attachment and aversion and able to control his senses through regulated principles of freedom can obtain the complete mercy of Lord. You see, Prabhupada brings the concept of regulated principles here. See? Why? Because we learned previously that rules and regulations will not allow you to think. So there's a link here. But what is so important in this verse? Can anybody tell me? But a person free from
self-control.
Mercy? Okay, but that's a common phenomenon, no? Is there anything unusual? Yeah, tell me.
I'm thinking freedom, but I didn't understand why the word is used.
Okay, I'll tell you, This is a special word of Prabhupada, regulated principles of freedom. But anything else? But a person free from all attachment aversion, able to control his senses through regulated principles of freedom can obtain complete mercy of Lord. The point here is, the most important point here is, that if you see in Sanskrit this word, Vishaya Indriya Charan, you see the two-word meaning. Vishaya Indriya Charan. Vishaya means sense objects. Indriya means by senses. Charan means acting. Even though your senses are acting, still you will not be involved in attachment and aversion. Krishna is telling us, my devotees do not become inactive. They don't go to mountain. Yogis are fearful of attachment. So they leave everything, go to mountain. But my devotees are not fearful of attachment. They are still working in this material world. They are walking, but they are not affected by attachment and aversion. And this is a power of devotion.
Very good.
This is power of devotion. You are in the word of Maya and not affected by that. How do you do that?
Lotus.
Yeah. So that this verse, if anybody asks you why devotion is special, what is special about bhakti than jnana and yoga, and I mean to say those people look really hi-fi, no? They're sitting in meditation for 10 years, samadhi. And what devotees are dancing. What is this, These are like crazy fools, what they are doing. It seems like that. And they're working their job intuitively. But Krishna is saying, if Jnana Yoga is superior than Bhakti Yoga. Now you can say Bhakti Yoga is superior to Jnana Yoga and quote this verse.
Is it also possible that folks who are meditating, they may be dancing internally, not externally?
They may be dancing or whatever, but they are not elevated because they are they are dealing themselves from connection. You call them and ask them, come here and then we'll test you. They'll not come. They don't come. They don't come in this world. They're fearful. We'll fall down. So devotees are more powerful, although they seem simple. So devotees, bhakta looks simple, but bhakti yoga is not that simple. It's powerful. So this is a question. This is the answer to that question. If you have to, anybody asks, bhakti yoga is inferior to jnana yoga? No. Bhakti yoga is superior. You see this verse, and this is superior. And Prabhupada says, through regulative principles of freedom, Atma Vashair Vidhya Atma. Why he says regulative principles of freedom? To make us understand that regulative principles are not suppression. That's what we were talking.
Yeah.
It's giving you freedom. Just like kite. You kite. So kite, you put a thread. And unless thread is there with the kite and you are regulating, it will go high. It is cut. No regulation, it will come down. So by regulation, you go up. There's no regulation, you come down. That's why Prabhupada is adding this freedom. That is why Prabhupada's Gita is special. No other Gita. Prabhupada, although freedom is not there in the Sanskrit, but he adds. Why he adds? To give us insight. What is actually going on in this verse? If you don't add this freedom, then we will say, come on, this is like nonsense, suppressing. So that's why Prabhupada is Acharya, he's preacher. That's what makes this Gita special. So anybody can, if somebody asks you how this Gita is special, quote this verse. And show this, see what Prabhupada is writing. Regulatory principles, freedom. That's why you should read this translation and not any other translation. And then you can develop, and then you can tell him, see, you can tell the history of Western philosophy, church, how they criticize, they are suppressing. So if you read any other translation, they'll not add freedom, and then you'll get confused. Prabhupada has freedom. So then you can link science, philosophy, church, spirituality, and then show by one verse. That's the answer for that question.
Freedom from problems.
Yeah, freedom in liberation. You're situated in yourself. That's what we talked. Your happiness becomes free of slavery of this world. Your happiness is situated with Krishna. Get freedom. Your senses are no longer attracted to this world. That's freedom now. You're no slaves. So can obtain complete mercy of Lord. If this shloka is also an answer to question, who will get mercy? See, who gets mercy? It is not a person who keeps on eating prasad. No. That's a limb of devotion. It's not a person who keeps on dancing. It's not a person who blah 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 whatever. Whatever you do, it is a person who is free from attachment and aversion while who is doing activities. It is a person who follows rules and regulations strictly. Because if you don't follow rules and regulations strictly, your mind will start thinking of something else, you will fall down. So who obtains mercy? That's where Prabhupada said, follow rules regulations like military principles. Otherwise you can't get mercy. Because there is a concept that there is no need to follow rules and regulations, simply love Krishna. No? There's a concept like that. Yeah. And then you can obtain mercy. Why you are so picky about rules and regulations? We are picky because there's a science. Krishna is explaining, it will help you to go up. Otherwise you'll fall down. You can't love God. So, two things. Who follow rules and regulations nicely in this, of freedom. And second, who is free from attachment and aversions in this material world. That means he can do the needful for Krishna. He doesn't have his own attachment. Yes. Attachment to his own plans. Reactions of others' plans. That's first chapter, no? He's free of that. Now he understands the plans of God and he can do that without being attracted to unnecessary things. Pushed here and there. He gets mercy, simple. So see, such a nice thing. Our conception of getting mercy is totally different, no?
Right.
Is different. So Prabhupada is doing both things. Rules, regulations, and fulfilling the plans of Lord. That's what matters. Otherwise, you don't get mercy. And that's what this chapter is. Oh wow. This is what I wanted to tell you. This is important. And then you can read other verses. It's finished. Hare Krishna. Anything you want to ask? Finished the second chapter.
Anybody on the call would like to ask any questions?
You all want to ask or you can ask?
Yes, so this freedom from attachment and aversion is a Herculean thing. How come the regulative principles of freedom help us to attain the freedom from attachment?
Yeah, I just told it is, if you follow regulative principles, you will not think about material. You will be forced not to think about things which are disconnected with Lord. Regulative principles will force us not to think about nonsense. They will force us to think about Krishna. That's how regulative principles are designed by our acharyas. So when you are forced, then you advance, just like a child is forced in school to read. So he advances first class, second class, third class, fourth class. He doesn't want to read, but he's forced. So similarly, we are forced, and then slowly we'll become attached. So it is a difficult task, but if we follow the program, system given by acharyas, the more sincerely we follow, the more we become free. And we can understand how do we become free. Krishna has spoken those 4 questions. How he sits, how he talks, how he walks, all these things you keep on checking. If that's happening, you're getting free. Is it okay? Is she hearing? Oh, it.
Yes, yes, Prabhuji. But one more question. Do we attain the mercy of the Lord after getting free from attachment and aversion? No.
Krishna says complete mercy. Read there. Complete mercy. So you start getting, as you follow rules and regulations, you start getting mercy. But when you follow perfectly, then you get complete mercy. This is the question of complete mercy. Complete mercy means love. So you get love. But right from the beginning, Krishna gives you mercy. And that mercy he gives on his own accord. We don't deserve, but he gives. That's called causeless mercy. To help us advance. And then when you follow properly, that's complete mercy. That's okay?
Why
She's
not mind?
Sorry.
I
know she's not answering. She can hear me?
She comes a little late.
Okay. Okay, I finished the answer.
Or maybe she got disconnected.
Okay, Prabhu, yeah.
Prabhuji, question is, why does mind is kind of addicted?
You have to go, everybody has to go.
Yeah, we'll continue with this
Yeah,
question.
quick,
and then-
Why does mind is addicted or attached for sense gratification?
Why it is attached?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Why it is attached? Okay, why it is attached? I told yesterday, because we are envious of God. If we are envious of God, this is a punishment. Maya punishes us. This is a punishment. Just like if you are envious of government, you break rules, you're put in prison. There are locks. So this is a lock. You're locked to this material world. Okay. You're locked. This is a lock. Now you can't break this lock. So the system is, you remove enviousness and you'll be released. And what is the system of removing enviousness? You love him. Devotion. Just ulta. That's all. So we are forced. It is not, we are punished. We are being punished by an energy of Lord. It is a positive energy. It is not a misconception. Jnanis, they like to say, why we are attached? Because we don't have knowledge. If you take knowledge, you will be detached. No. Just like example is given, just like there's a moon. And you everybody knows there's one moon. Is it? But if you have squint, you know squint? Everybody knows? Bhanga. If you have squint, then you see everything two. Then you see moon two. But you know it's one. There's just one moon. But still you'll not be able to figure out. You will see two.
You will see two wives.
Yeah, everything two. But you know there's just one wife. Wife can be two, but moon cannot be two. So you just see two moons now, but you know it's one. So the point is, even if you get knowledge that you have one moon, still you'll not be able to figure out. That is illusion. Illusion is not just lack of knowledge. It is a positive energy. It's a magic on you, by which you are attached. Even if you understand you will not be to be attached, still you will be attached. Until unless you come back to Krishna. See, there's a difference, no? There's a difference here. So devotees say it is a positive energy acting. Jnanis say it is lack of knowledge. We don't agree to that, it's lack of knowledge. Because you can take knowledge, but yet you don't understand anything. Unless that effect of energy is over. That energy will leave us if we surrender to God. Otherwise it's not going to leave us. That's why many big scholars, they fall down. Let's come on. That's the idea. It's not in our power.
Bigger help.
Yeah. Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Jai.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Second chapter ki Jai.